On Thursday, July 24th, we have this month's new moon happening in the sign of Leo, and it's going to be big and bold and dramatic and passionate and fiery and all the things. As always, new moons bring new beginnings and they signal the beginning of new cycles. But with this one, there's kind of like a little bit of a twist because we're in the middle of Mercury retrograde, and Mercury retrogrades are not typically the best time to start new things. This new moon is also forming an exact opposition to Pluto retrograde in the sign of Aquarius, and it's also forming a trine to the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Aries, and it's also forming a sextile to Uranus newly in Gemini. So a lot going on. So before I pull up the chart, be sure to give this video a like and hit subscribe so you can stay updated on what's going on astrologically and in the sky. Also, hi, I'm Mackenzie, aka Astromac, and if you're new here, I'm a professional astrologer and I make videos all about astrology, and we talk all things astrology on this channel. I also have a Patreon where I make weekly astrology forecasts, so be sure to, go over there and subscribe, become a patron, and it's actually because of my patrons and my sponsors that I'm able to make these YouTube videos and put them out there almost every week. And I also offer a bunch of different astrology readings, so if you're interested in that, you can click the link down below and check those out. Now, let's pull up this new moon chart and dive right in. So, as we can see here, the sun and the moon are exactly conjunct at 2 degrees and 8 minutes of Leo. That's what a new moon is when the sun and the moon come together in the sky and they form a beautiful conjunction. And that's why it's associated with new beginnings and the start of new cycles. And new moons are typically a time for like rest and contemplation and reflection. And when you think about it like astronomically, new moons, they're called the dark moon because we can't see any light reflected on the moon because they're so close together. And so because of that, with this new moon, it's kind of like that time where we're being asked to go within and really tune into our heart space, especially because this is happening in the sign of Leo, and Leo is all about that heart-centered energy. So getting still enough and quiet enough to really listen to what your heart is longing for under this new moon. And I know like typically when we think about Leo energy, we think about like this loud, dramatic, expressive, passionate energy, and it is all of those things. But because this is a new moon, it's kind of like all of that energy is kind of like being turned inwards a little bit, and we're being asked to find that from within us. And so this would be a great new moon to do some like vision boarding or journaling or just doing those things that help you get in touch with like that inner flame. It really depends though, like where this new moon is happening for you in your own chart, like which house or which area of life is getting this new beginning. Leo is the sign of the zodiac that is ruled by the sun, and so we're right in the middle of summer with this beginning of Leo season, so it's kind of like the sun is at its peak and it's at its strongest, really. And Leo energy is just like this passionate, confident, dramatic, colorful, and expressive energy that just like can't help but, be the center of attention. And it's a sign that is very in touch with like the fun side of life, that playful energy, like our inner child. Like that's what Leo is. It's that sign of our inner child. So for this new moon, it's kind of like those new beginnings and the new cycles that we're wanting to tap into are those things that we're just like so passionate about, and those things that like really feed our inner flame, like that energy of like what keeps us going, really. Like what excites you and just ignites this feeling of passion. Like what just fills you up with joy that it just like, emanates out of you. And so pay attention to those things that just like light you up from that inside out, that just like, again, it emanates out of you. And again, those things that you just feel passionately about. And it's kind of like those things that you could talk about for hours on end and never get bored of. And again, Leo is associated with our heart space, and so it's very much like connected to this authentic self-expression and our inner child again. And so because this is a new moon and we're in the middle of Mercury retrograde, we're already kind of feeling more reflective and kind of introspective. So maybe using this time to reflect back on those things that you did as a child that were just for the sake of fun or for the sake of creativity and self-expression. And really just like let yourself play, you know. When we play, it's kind of like our analytical mind just steps aside. And it's kind of like we might even get like fully absorbed in what we're doing, whether it's just like we're playing a game or we're painting or creating art, you know, whatever it might be. Maybe it's dancing and singing. But when we're totally absorbed in what we're doing, you know, it's kind of like we enter this flow state. And it's like we lose track of time when we're totally absorbed, and we even lose like that self-consciousness a little bit as well. Just like, again, where we're totally in that flow and having fun and expressing ourselves and creating for the sake of creating. And you know what? Like, play is so beneficial for everybody, you know, not just kids. When we let ourselves play and create and express ourselves, you know, it also helps with boosting our creativity. And with that boost in creativity, that also helps with like our problem solving skills and our ability to think outside of the box and to innovate. It's helping us to kind of like see things from a different perspective and really make those new mental connections. And as we do that, it kind of makes room for us to create solutions that we wouldn't be able to see if we were kind of like, you know, stuck in our old way of thinking. And I feel like that's being accentuated even more because this new moon does form a sextile to Uranus in Gemini. But also when we're like playing and expressing ourselves and creating, it also enhances our mental health and our own like feeling of mental well-being. Because when we allow ourselves to do that, you know, it brings these feelings of like joy and this feeling of like accomplishment almost. And with that comes like a greater feeling of satisfaction in our lives. It also reduces stress and anxiety, like when we're able to put all of our focus on things that we enjoy and those things that we're passionate about and the things that we find like fun. It really does lower those stress hormones and kind of like boosts our mood in the process. So yeah, lots of benefits to playing and creating and expressing ourselves. So actually, under this new moon, you could be setting intentions around like new cycles of self-expression and creativity and following through with your creative ideas and just like setting intentions around reclaiming your joy and your passion. And also setting intentions around like, you know, allowing yourself to be seen, because I think a lot of people kind of like hide their light or they dim their light or, you know, they make themselves smaller. And that could have been like a, you know, self-protective mechanism when we were, you know, growing up for, you know, a myriad of reasons. But really try to like, again, tune into your heart space and express yourself from there, like authentically, and just give yourself permission to be yourself. Also remember that Leo is that sign that's ruled by the sun again, and so the area of life where we have Leo, like house that we have Leo, tends to be an area of life that we really like shine through, or an area of life where we feel most confident or self-expressive or creative. Or on the flip side, it could be an area of life where we need like a lot of external reassurance and validation. Something I kept hearing when I was like looking at this new moon chart is to do it for yourself. Like whatever you're doing, whether it's like a creative hobby or it's like a project or whatever it might be, like you're taking a class, something, I don't know. Whatever it is you're starting under this new moon, do it for yourself. Like what you create, do it for yourself, because it's not really for anyone else. Because the perception of like what you create, or you know, whether it's like just any kind of expression, whether it's like creating art or a YouTube video or a website, or like how you dress and kind of express yourself that way, people's perception of that and how they receive it is kind of like it's none of our business. It's kind of like it's out of our control and it's out of our hands. Your job as a creative person is to just keep creating and to have that courage to put it out there and keep putting yourself out there and keep expressing yourself. And then whatever happens after that is simply a byproduct of that. So again, we don't really need that external validation or reassurance. Setting intentions around giving yourself that validation and reassurance would be a good use of this new moon, actually. And so you really you got to keep going, and you got to have that courage to keep putting yourself out there and keep showing up, and that consistency will really pay off. And so again, just giving ourselves that reassurance and that validation that we really crave, especially because Mercury is retrograde during this new moon. And so it's kind of like these intentions that we're setting, it's kind of like they have to start from within. As always with Mercury retrograde, it brings that potential for things to not feel like the most clear, because we're just kind of feeling like maybe a little mentally foggy and a little like confused, or there might be those miscommunications and just misunderstandings and all around like annoyances and frustrations. So because Mercury is retrograde, it's not the best time to launch like these brand new projects or like full send on, whatever it might be, whether it's like a relationship, a job, or a house, or like a huge like life decision. Like obviously this doesn't apply to every single person, and so take what I'm saying with a grain of salt, because it's all very dependent on like you and your own birth chart and whether you've thought about this before. But general rule of thumb with Mercury retrograde is like, don't start anything brand new. It's more of like an introspective and reflective time where it's kind of like, let's sit back and look at like past projects that we may have overlooked in the past, or like let's think about those things that we're passionate about, and are there things that we kind of put on the back burner that it could have even been like a year ago, and things like that. And just like we didn't have that time and energy in the past, and now that Mercury's retrograde, we're getting that time to reflect back and kind of make revisions and see things from a different angle and a different perspective. And like I said, with any Mercury retrograde, it could bring like those annoyances, but we're being asked to maybe be a little more patient, and kind of also being asked to be more flexible, which might not be the most easy because Mercury is in the fixed sign of Leo, and Leo tends to be maybe a little like stubborn sometimes. So I am picking up on like maybe a little bit of frustrating energy with this new moon. But just because Mercury's retrograde doesn't mean that we can't set new intentions during a new moon, because that's what new moons are all about. And so it's just that like, maybe we set these new intentions and, they might need to be like reworked later on, or maybe like we'll make these like tweaks and adjustments as the weeks go on. And it might be that like, maybe we don't have all the information that we need to, set these crystal clear intentions. So like over the next couple of weeks, like we might be getting more information that can help us with these intentions. And so like the actual like taking action on these intentions, it might not be for a couple of weeks that we're able to actually like execute these plans when Mercury stations direct on August 11th. But during these couple of weeks, it'd be a really good time to kind of solidify our plans and, get a plan in place. But something that we have not even talked about yet is a major player in this new moon chart is it is forming almost an exact opposition to the planet Pluto that is currently retrograde in the sign of Aquarius. So it might feel like we're kind of facing like this very intense opposition, and that might show up as like a person or a situation, or it could be like a more of an internal thing. We're really being asked to like get in touch with our deeper truth. And depending on like how well you know yourself, this could be like easy peasy lemon squeezy, or it could be a very intense experience. And so with this opposition, we're really being asked to get in touch with our like deeper emotional truth and release that need for control, because, whenever Pluto's involved, it's kind of like, Pluto's the one that's in charge here. So reflecting on those things that you do have control over, like your thoughts, your words, your actions, your attitudes, and your beliefs. But you can't control other people, and you can't control how like you're being perceived, whether you're, expressing yourself authentically or not. It really doesn't matter how you're being perceived to other people. And so just releasing that need to control how like you're being perceived and received. And I know like typically it's full moons that are associated with a time for release, but with Pluto involved, it's kind of like you got to let go of some things to be able to embrace the transformative energy that Pluto brings. And we also have Mars in Virgo conjunct the South Node during this new moon. And with this energy, it does kind of bring like a purging energy where we're kind of purifying and simplifying and cleansing our lives, and again just releasing those things that we don't need in our journey forward. And then this new moon is also forming a trine to the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in the sign of Aries, and in a way, I feel like this is kind of helping to soften some of that Plutonian energy that we're feeling during this new moon. It's hard to say because there really is a lot going on in this chart, but I think it does, like, some of that Pluto intensity, I think Neptune is helping to kind of like soften that. And so with this aspect to the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, I do think that like the theme of boundaries might be coming up. But because it's trine, it's not like we have to actively assert our boundaries or anything. It's kind of like the boundaries might just like make themselves known. So I think as we're releasing that need to control how we're being perceived with that Pluto opposition, I think also just as we continue like showing up for ourselves and we continue putting ourselves out there, even if it is scary, really utilizing that Leo courage and that consistency. I think that Saturn will really reward us for doing that. And then we also have a sextile to Uranus in Gemini, and so I really do feel like under this new moon we're being asked to be adaptable and move with the changes as best as we can. With Uranus, we're being asked to innovate and think outside of the box. And, during Leo season, we're also being asked to be creative. And, I really feel like innovation and creativity go hand in hand. And so under this new moon, it's kind of like it's giving us this new beginning that gives us this opportunity to do things differently than we have in the past. Because, if you want to get different results, then sometimes you got to do something that you've never done before. Like if you historically in the past are known to kind of like shut down emotionally, then maybe try opening up a little bit and just seeing what happens. Or if you're a creative and you've never like shared your creations before, maybe just sharing them, maybe like on a Instagram story or a TikTok, and just seeing how it feels. Or maybe you've like thought about taking a dance class in the past, but you've kind of like held yourself back and kept yourself small for fear of looking silly. Or maybe like you've thought about joining a club before, but you've kind of like held yourself back for whatever the reasoning might be. Maybe this is the new moon where you finally like let go of those things that hold yourself back, and like you let yourself just have a little fun, and you like take that dance class just for the hell of it, and just to see what happens and to see if you even like it, because you'll never know if you don't try. So if you've been too afraid to do something in the past, just let yourself try it out and just see what happens. Or maybe it might be like you've really relied on other people's like validation and approval in the past. And so under this new moon, maybe try giving yourself that validation and approval. And so really like think about those things that you've wanted to do in the past that you maybe like held yourself back, and you're like, no, like you talked yourself out of it. Like maybe like, again, it could be like taking a dance class or a painting class or like joining a club, or maybe it's like, you finally start writing that book that the idea has been sitting in your brain for long enough. Or it might be like you could reach out to somebody that you've thought about, reaching out to for a long time, but you talk yourself out of it for whatever that reason might be. So under this new moon, it might be like, like, fuck it, let's just try it. That's kind of like the energy of this new moon. So even though we're in the middle of Mercury retrograde and this new moon is forming like almost an exact opposition to the planet Pluto, that doesn't mean that we can't still have fun and tap into like our passions and those things that really just like light us up from the inside out. But do get in touch with like your inner child and set intentions around creative self-expression or authentic self-expression, and just incorporating more fun and play into your daily life and inviting more joy into your life. And really try to tune into your heart space and really like listen to those inner callings, and pay attention to just what excites you and ignites that inner flame. Put your focus on like what enlivens you and what like warms your heart space and again just excites you, and set intentions from that space. Because with Leo new moons, it's kind of like we want to be confident and proud of those things that we're starting. And with that also comes a little bit of risk, but also keep in mind that with risk comes reward. Your job as a creative person is to just keep creating and do it for yourself. And then having that courage to, put yourself out there and express yourself authentically. And then releasing that need to control how we're being perceived with that Pluto opposition. Above all else, though, I really feel like, under this new moon, just give yourself permission to have more fun and invite more joy and passion into your life. Now be sure to let me know how you're feeling about this new moon down in the comments. I'm really hoping it's a fun one. And don't be afraid to get creative and think outside of the box with this one. So even like beyond what I talked about here, I really feel like collectively, we're all gonna be innovating and having to get more creative moving forward. But yeah, if you haven't subscribed already, be sure to do that now. And yeah, I think that's all I've got for now. So until next time, love you, bye!